With Nissan, I mean, the basic idea, Rob Sultan and Try It Day came up with this idea of doing this thing in the first place. Dynamite idea, really, and that's a great spot. Is dynamite ideas extremely well executed.
Everything got started when Bob Thomas, the president of Nissan, came to us and asked us to do something very different, a different form of car advertising, to do something that really entertained people. So with that in mind, this toy spot kind of came about where we're looking for something that was very dynamic, something very different. The thought of a remote control car being the product rather than the actual product, I think is kind of at the core of the idea and what makes the spot very different.
The real trick with animation and stop motion is breathing life into a character, and you do that through movement. And with a character like this one, who's a plastic doll, you have a somewhat limited range of emotion and movement that you can get out of it. But I think you can use that to your advantage. There are subtle things that you can do, little nuances of movement that really communicate what the character is thinking and feeling. An animatic is an editorial tool. It's basically the storyboard taken and photographed and then digitized into the Avid. We take that and we cut it just like the finished commercial is going to be cut, or at least as close as we can get with just drawings. It helps us to plan the commercial out before we shoot anything. It also gives us a chance to put music against it and see what's going to work.
Basically, the characters are designed and then sculpted, and once the sculpt comes over here, we need to determine what our end result's going to be with the character. We'll take the sculpt, set it up on a block, pour a silicone molding rubber into it, let it set overnight. Cutting it open, we would then have a negative impression of the Nick head sculpt. Taking a casting out of that, we would end up with a hard plastic Nick head. So this is the final version, and then that gets added on to the armature and the body, and takes on from there and goes through the rest of the process to make the full character.
As soon as they finish the sculpting of the character, it'll come to me, and it'll also go to the armature shop. So while they're building the armature and working on the interior workings, I start drafting patterns for the clothing. Initially, we went for a really military look, and we were trying to find different styles of military outfits that we could use. And we ended up with a final, going more toward the safari look, the kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones sort of feeling.
For this particular job, I painted all the heads for Nick, Tad, and Roxanne's. So what I get is a plastic head that's like this, and it depends. It can be white or gray. It depends on the materials that they've used. And so we make these nice and perfect, and then I paint them. The eyes, they all move. And so that was a little difficult. We really had to deal with getting inside of there and getting it so the eyes could actually move and it doesn't disturb the paint.
Stop motion animation is a very old technique. It's been around as long as filmmaking has been around. And it just involves shooting one frame of film at a time and manipulating an object or a character just a little bit, just moving in a tiny amount or whatever amount is appropriate, and then photographing a frame. And you move it a little bit more, you photograph another frame. And then you put enough frames together and you've got a movie. What I'm most proud of in this spot is the restraint that I think we exercised in terms of the animation and the way that we stylized the movement to really be doll-like in a way. These characters, their expressions aren't over the top. There isn't a lot going on there. There's just sort of the minimum necessary to communicate whatever particular emotion they're feeling. And in the case of Nick, he really moves very dynamically. Not so much like a human, but more like a doll would move.
We literally looked at 200 different pieces of music in order to choose the right song for this. My art director, Joe Hemp, came up one day and he said, listen to this. And it had, Van Halen's Girl, You Really Got Me Now on it. and it sunk up perfect to the cut that we already had. It was, I mean, almost unbelievable. What you see on the screen is very much like what I had in my head, and very rarely does that happen.